If you'll open up to 1 Samuel chapter 22. 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 through 23. We're doing the whole chapter today. Title of the message is Unexpected Provision. Unexpected Provision. Do you recall what the theme of what we're doing now in 1 Samuel is? It's David on the run. The story I'm going to begin with today is she threw a javelin in the air, and where it fell, she soon found out. Anne Goodland's toss in Coinsborough, England, happened to land on a power line. 2 explosions, a fire, and a housing development blackout proved it. Repairmen were understanding, though, merely suggesting she try rubber-tipped spears from now on, or maybe a boomerang. Wouldn't it be nice if once you've done something bad, someone would come alongside of you and just help you make everything be okay? You ever done something really stupid and you just feel about this big? And you just know that somebody's going to say something really dumb to you, something really stupid, and make you feel even worse. But they don't. They come alongside of you, lift you up, pick you up, and it's just an amazing, awesome, wonderful, warm feeling. And that's what we're going to see today. Last week we saw David's deception as he fled from Saul and is now on the run. He ran to the priest demanding food and a weapon. Unfortunately for everyone there, a spy was in their midst. Do you remember his name? Doeg. I know can't remember something like that either. If it would have been like John or something, yeah, we probably would have remembered it. Doeg, the Edomite, was standing by, ready to tell Saul all that he had seen. This deception of David will continue to decay. Fortunately for David and for all of us, we serve a God who's able to provide for us even when we find ourselves in a world of hurt. Thankfully, I'm glad none of us have ever done anything that dumb, that stupid, that rotten, where we find ourselves in that kind of a world of hurt where we need to have God himself come in and dig us up out of that pit. We have, haven't we, though? This means yes and this means no. We're just getting started, guys. We have found ourselves in situations and circumstances like that over and over in life. And one of the coolest things about God is when you find yourself in a situation like that, he's really, really good about coming alongside of you, picking you up, getting you up out of that pit, and putting you on dry ground, ready to go again. Don't you just love that about our God? That even when you fall and are failing, he's still good enough to pick you up and put you back on your feet. I'm thankful to serve a God like that because I know I mess up all the time. And I am very thankful for the grace of God in my life, and his mercy is very abundant to me and to David and to you. Today we continue on in 1 Samuel chapter 22, verses 1 through 23. God wants you to see his provision. He's going to provide for David. And I'm not sure if David deserves any of this provision. But I have to remind myself, as I was studying through this, I'm thinking to myself, wow, David really horsed up, going over to the priest, making these demands, taking the showbread. I know he could do it, and I know he could take the sword of Goliath, but was this really his best move? Just because you have the right to do something doesn't make it right. He could have gone a number of different places and gotten food and a weapon. But I had to remind myself as I was studying this, because I kept wanting to say, David, you big bonehead. What's wrong with you? I had to remind myself, you know what? Who's actually the bonehead in this situation? It's usually me. And God is going to take David and do something really neat with him. But there's still going to be some consequence for some of this business. So let's see this. There's 3 ways we see his provision in this chapter. Verses 1 through 5, the first way we see his provision, verses 1 through 5. God brings friends as David assembles his men. Does David really deserve to have anybody go along with him? But God's going to provide it anyway. Second way we see his provision, verses 6 through 19. God brings faithfulness as Saul assassinates many. Yeah, sin will continue to follow you. And the third way we see his provision, verses 20 through 23. God brings favor as Abiathar associates majesty. Did you get all that written down? God brings friends as David assembles men. God brings faithfulness as Saul assassinates many. And God brings favor as Abiathar associates majesty. Three ways we're going to see God provide in this chapter. Verses 1 through 5 is where we start. David therefore departed from there and escaped to the cave of Adullam. So when his brothers and his father's house heard it, they went down there to him. And everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented gathered to him. So he became captain over them. And there were about 400 men with him. Then David went from there to Mizpah of Moab, and he said to the king of Moab, "Please let my father and mother come here with you till I know what God will do for me." So he brought them before the king of Moab, and they dwelt with him all the time that David was in the stronghold. Now the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Depart. Go to the land of Judah." So David departed and went into the forest of Hereth. So what are we seeing here? So David's going to depart from there. He's going to go to Adullam. He's going to go to this like cave structure. He's trying to hide from Saul. And his father and his father's house heard it, and they tried to get to him to spend some time with him. I can totally understand. Your boy is in a world of hurt. I can totally understand. He wants to go to him. And in case you were ever wondering why I alliterate the way I do, what is alliteration, by the way? When all my points in the message all have the same letter. You know, God brings friends as David assembles men. I had the F, the A, the M, right? That's because God does it. Did you notice here in verse 2 what he did? Everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, and everyone who was discontented. See, God does it too. Or am I the only one that really likes that? You guys are quiet today. Everyone who was in distress, everyone who was in debt, everyone who was discontented gathered to him. Now, how did these people have it in their hearts and in their mind to go seek after David and to join with him in whatever effort that he was doing? I think that the people of that time knew full well that David was supposed to be the king. In fact, they've sung the song, Saul's killed his 1,000 and David his 10,000s. The people knew that David was supposed to be the king. Even though he's on the run, even though that Saul's a big meanie and a bully, they know that David is supposed to be the king. And they're seeing what's going on in their world. And they're seeing Saul do some really dumb things. He's going after David. He should be king of the land, not just going after David. Like, what do you think you're doing, Saul? Why are you going after just this one guy? And the people are starting to see that this is not a good reality that we're living in here. David is supposed to be the king. They're distressed, they're in debt, they're discontented, and they're trying to do something about it. And God has put it in their heart to go after David, to join forces with him, and be part of his first 400 men. Has God ever put it into your heart to join in with a crowd like this, to do something that you knew that God wanted to have get done? These guys knew that David was supposed to be the king. And they see the nonsense and they say, you know what, we're done with this and we're going to go join up with David and we're going to go do what God wants us to do. And God provided these men to David. And they're going to come in really handy. Maybe not today, maybe not next week. But I assure you, they will come in very handy sooner or later. Because while David is on the run, and we've seen in the past how God has been training and teaching David for the future kingdom that he is going to be in charge of as king one day, we might be in this different section where David is on the run, but God is still teaching. God really never stops teaching. And he's going to bring to him his first 400 men that he's going to be captain over in this sense. Now, they're not over Saul, Because before he was captain and he killed his tens of thousands, and I get it, but Saul was still kind of the man at the time. He's kind of on the run. He's on the lam now. And these 400 men, God is starting to bring to him in embryonic form, if you will, being in charge of people, shepherding these people. God did this. God has brought this to him. Did he deserve any of this? Does he deserve these 400 men? David could just as easily be on the run from Saul by himself. He started out that way. But God in his grace and in his mercy, in spite of what David has done, going to the priest and doing all that business, God is still going to be good to David. He's still going to follow through with what he said he was going to do. And sometimes I think that as we go through our Christian lives, I want you to think back to when you came to know the Lord. For me, it was March 3rd, 2002. Seems like yesterday to me. I mean, I still remember looking down at my shoes and saying, yep, you're right, let's go do this. And we went into Pastor Mike's office and we prayed. I accepted Jesus. I would love to tell you for the last 20 years it's been sunshine and rainbows and all good times. And I've never made a mistake. I'd love to tell you that I've been perfect. And it's real easy to put on that veneer of perfection. It's real easy to make people think that you got it all figured out. I'm here to tell you guys, I don't got much of anything figured out. I'm just one beggar telling another beggar where to find food at this point. Sorry if you wanted something more out of me. I'm a sinner saved by grace. And all the good things that God has continued to bring to me in my life wasn't because that I did some sort of super spiritual thing that somehow earned me something with God and therefore he did something great for me. That's not how this works. We serve a God who's so awesome and who's so good, who's such full of grace and so full of mercy that in spite of all of my shortcomings and all of my problems and all my frailty and all of my sin and all the troubles that I bring with me, God is so good that he still brings good things to me. And who am I, Lord, that I should deserve any of this stuff? What have I done? The answer is nothing. I provide nothing to this equation. There's nothing that I can do, say. There's nowhere I can go. There's nobody I can talk to. There's nothing that I can ever try to think about ever doing that I could ever repay God for what he did for me when he died on that cross. And the goodness that he continues to give to me in spite of my frailty always seems to blow me away and astonish me because I know I'm not worthy or deserving of any of it. And God help us to not take this stuff for granted. It's real easy to go through life and say, yeah, I deserve those 400 men. Don't you know I'm destined to be the king anyway? Of course, why do I only have 400 men? What's your problem, God? I deserve a lot more than 400 men, don't I? I'm the future king after all. There should be 4,000 of them. There should be 40,000 of them. And you gave me 400? What's wrong with you? Sometimes we act like this. And we start to get mad at God because we think he should be doing more than what we already have. When, by the way, time out, how about we just be thankful for what we got? Let's try that on. Be thankful for all the good things that you have in your life. Identify those good things, those blessings that come from the hand of God in your life. And keep in mind, you didn't do a thing to deserve any of them. You serve a God who's so awesome, so great, so wonderful, so powerful. He's just going to do it for you because he loves you. Because you know we do that with our kids, right? A little girl shall remain nameless, who sometimes just needs to be thrown through a window. But you know what? I give her the ice cream anyway. Y'all know what I mean. You think I've ever told her no for a cookie? That's how we treat our kids. We do anything for her. I don't care how annoying she is sometimes. I don't care how early she wakes me up in the morning. I don't care how late she keeps me up at night. Right? maybe there's a, Chelsea, there's probably a little degree that's kind of true. But it doesn't matter how bad the naps were. It doesn't matter how little supper she ate. She's still going to get the ice cream later, isn't she? You bet. You bet she is. Probably every time, too. It's like she's got me wrapped around her little finger. I'd like to think I got kind of the same pull with God, you know? I find myself to be pretty annoying, too. But he still gives me the ice cream every time I ask, doesn't he? Let's be grateful for what we got. Because we don't deserve any of it. None. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Zero. Nothing. We deserve nothing. We're wretched, rotten sinners at the end of the day who deserve nothing. Oh, wretched man that I am, Paul says at the end of chapter 7 of the book of Romans. Oh, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? Praise be to God for Jesus Christ, who saved me from this despicable life. Not only does he get these 400 men, but David is able to go to Moab. Well, what's significant about Moab and David? Does anybody remember? What's significant about David and Moab? Anybody? Going once, going twice? We went through the book a few weeks ago. The book of Ruth. Great grandma? Anybody? Where was she from? Moab. Do you think he went back to old Grandpappy's house in Moab? Maybe he's got a little pull there. And he found some grace with the king of Moab. So he brought them there before the king of Moab, and they dwelt there for a while. Did God have to allow that? What about the prophet Gad in verse 5? Gad said to David, do not stay in the stronghold, depart. What a nice guy this is. Telling him something from the Lord, what David should be doing. Did Gad have to do that? Did God have to tell Gad any of this? These friends that God is bringing to David, whether it's the king of Moab, whether it's the prophet Gad, whether it's these 400 people, they all have different purposes and different parts to play in this story. And everybody that you come across in life, from big to small, from young to old, from work to not work, doesn't matter. Everybody that God brings into your life, he brings them into your life for a reason. Can you figure out that reason? What is God trying to do with you, help you with, show you? What is God trying to develop in you? Why did God bring this person into your life? These 400 men, let's figure it out. Because they're for battle, they're for war, let's say. The king of Moab, why did God allow this guy to be so friendly with David? Because David needed some place for his family to go in this time. It's not a great time. Thankfully, there was a place to go, the king of Moab. Awesome. The prophet Gad, well, who doesn't like to have the prophet in their life? You know, we all need the man of God in our lives. At least you should want the man of God in your life. You should. If you don't, it's a red flag. It's a whole other sermon. God brings friends as David assembles men. But the next way we see his provision. God brings faithfulness as Saul assassinates many. How many, if you didn't read this, you're probably thinking to yourself, what, assassinating many? How many get assassinated in this next section? Do you remember? 85. 85 priests. He didn't just go around the countryside and just start chopping heads off of whoever he found. It's 85 priests. Let's read this. When Saul heard that David and the men who were with him had been discovered. Now, Saul was staying in Gibeah under a tamarisk tree in Ramah with his spear in his hand, and all of his servants standing about him. Then Saul said to his servants who stood about him, "Hear now, you Benjamites. Will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards and make you all captains over thousands and captains of hundreds? All of you have conspired against me, and there is no one who reveals to me that my son has made a covenant with the son of Jesse. There is not one of you who is sorry for me or reveals to me that my son has stirred up my servant against me to lie in wait as it is this day." Then answered Doeg the Edomite, who was set over the servant of Saul, and said, "I saw the son of Jesse go into Nob to Ahimelech to the son of Ahitub." I hope I said that right, forgive me. "And he inquired of the Lord for him, gave him provisions, and gave him the sword of Goliath the Philistine. And the king sent to call Ahimelech the priest, the son of Ahitub, and all the father's house, the priests who were in Nob, and they all came to the king. And Saul said, 'Hear now, son of Ahitub.' He answered, 'Here I am, my lord.' Then Saul said to him, 'Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, and that you gave him bread and a sword, and have inquired of God for him, that he should rise against me to lie in wait as it is this day?' So Ahimelech answered the king and said, 'And who among all your servants is as faithful as David, who is the king's son-in-law, who goes at your bidding and is honorable in your house? Did I then begin to inquire of God for him? Far be it from me. Let not the king impute anything to his servant, or to any of the house of my father, for your servant knew nothing of all this, little or much.' And the king said, 'You shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and your father's house.' Then the king said to the guards who stood about him, 'Turn and kill the priests of the Lord, because their hand is also with David, and because they knew when he fled and did not tell it to me.' But the servants of the king would not lift their hands to strike the priests of the Lord. And the king said to Doeg, 'You turn and kill the priests.' So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck the priests and killed on that day 85 men who wore the linen ephod. Also Nob, the city of the priests, he struck with the edge of the sword, both men and women, children and nursing infants, oxen and donkeys and sheep, with the edge of the sword." God brings faithfulness as Saul assassinates many. So what do I mean by this? Well, we turn our attention to Saul at this point in verse 6. Saul heard that David and his men were going about, and Saul was sitting there with a spear in his hand. And what kind of image does the author want you to have about what Saul is doing at this point? He's sitting there with a spear in his hand. In other words, what? He's ready. If David were to show up out of the bush, he'd kill him right then. His spear's in his hand. He's ready to go. And he says, "Hear now, you Benjamites, will the son of Jesse give every one of you fields and vineyards and make you captains?" What is he saying? He's saying, I am so much better than David. David's not going to make you captain over thousands and captains over hundreds. David's not going to give you vineyards in which to plant. David's not going to do any of this stuff for you. I am the king, and it is me that you should be following and listening to and following my lead. He's trying to make this case. All of you have conspired against me. There's no one who told me that my son is conspiring with this. And did you notice that he's not calling him David? Because this is one of the things that we like to do when we want to dehumanize something or someone. We stop referring to them by their name. If I wanted to say there's something wrong with, I'll use Pam. She's not here right now. I would say, that woman over there. Because if I was going to say something nice, I'd probably say, Pam is a wonderful person. If I said, that woman over there is a wonderful person, there's just a different context when I stop using a proper name. And Saul is picking up on this, and he keeps calling him the son of Jesse. He doesn't even refer to his son as Jonathan. He is mad. He is unhinged. This guy has lost it. And he's mad because nobody would tell him that Jonathan and David were in cahoots. How dare all of you not tell me that my son and the son of Jesse are conspiring against me? I don't know if he's got some sort of psychosis or some sort of psychological issue, if he's paranoid about something, I don't know what he's got going on. I'm no doctor for this stuff, but it seems like he's got some sort of paranoia about something. And so Doeg, the Edomite, who was set over the servants of Saul, said, I saw the son of Jesse. He picks up on what Saul's doing, and he doesn't call him David either, because he's trying to be in league with Saul. I saw the son of Jesse. He went to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. He inquired of the Lord for him, Ahimelech did. Gave him provisions. Gave him a sword. This guy's helping out David. Now wait just a second here, boys and girls. We read this last week, and is that what happened? Well, kinda. He did leave with the sword of Goliath, but he demanded it of the priest. The priest didn't just say, oh, here's the sword of Goliath. Why don't you go chase after Saul with this? That's not what happened. But if you talk to Doeg here, it's kind of like he's like saying that Ahimelech's just giving him all this stuff. Like Ahimelech's just in league with him. That's not exactly true. Doeg's a bit of a snake. Be careful who you associate with. There's snakes out there. And they'll tell their side of the story to make you look bad. Do you know anybody like this? So he brings all these people before him, Saul does. And Saul said, Hear now, son of Ahitub. Here I am, my lord. Like, okay. What do you need, man? You probably had no idea why he got called onto the carpet like this. Saul said, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, that you've given him bread and a sword and inquired of God against him, so that did you catch that? So that he should rise against me and to lie in wait. That is not at all what Ahimelech was doing. That's not why David was there. He wasn't there to battle Saul. He's not trying to gain allies or something like that. That's not why he was there. I don't think David had some of the best intentions, and it ended up pretty poorly, as we're going to see. But that's not exactly why he was there. But Saul thinks so, because that's what Doeg says. And so the answer, who is among your servants is as faithful as David? God brings faithfulness, guys. In spite of the fact that there's snakes out there, wolves in sheep's clothing, maybe you've heard that said. In spite of the fact that there are people like that out there, there are also people who have your back. This is one of Elijah's problems. Remember, he thought he was all alone? And there's none with me. And he was depressed and sad. And remember what God told him? There are still 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. You are not alone. There are other faithful people out there who will help you, who will defend you, who will take up your name, who will say good and positive things about you when you're not around. God can bring that kind of faithfulness. But let's flip it. Because we like to think that when I'm not around, people are saying nice things about me. Boy, I hope so. I hope so. But let's flip it. Are you saying nice things about other people? What if you were Ahimelech? We like to put ourselves in as David, don't we? I like to think of myself as David. Oh, boy, David. Let's say that you're Ahimelech this time. And the king, Saul, is standing in front of you, questioning you, quizzing you. What are you doing with David, son of Jesse? Are you going to stand tall, speak highly of David, defend David? Are you going to say good and positive, wholesome things about him? Or are you going to go, yeah, that guy's an idiot? God brings faithfulness. Did David deserve to have nice things said about him by this guy specifically in particular? The priest probably should say nice things, that's true. But the priest could have said, I plead the fifth. I'm not going to answer any of your questions. I'm going to plead the fifth on this one. I don't think the fifth was around back then, but he could have said something like that. No, he was faithful. He was faithful to defend David. He's faithful to defend God's plan. He's faithful to defend God's servant. He's faithful to defend right to the end. He probably didn't know that him and 84 other were going to be killed then for this at that time. But, does it matter? Because the next thing we're going to see, you shall surely die, Ahimelech, you and all your father's house. I love it that those guards that were with Saul said, no, we will not do this. We understand, Saul, that this guy's crazy. We're not doing this. And then he has to turn to Doeg, the snake, again. And Doeg kills 85 who wore the linen ephod, the priests. Not only that, also Nob, the city of the priests. He struck with the edge of the sword men, women, children, nursing infants, oxen, donkeys, sheep, all of them dead with the sword. How long did that take? How excruciating would that have been to be a part of something like that? Saul assassinates a lot of people that day by the hand of Doeg, the Edomite. But I'm going to guess that every one of them stayed faithful and true to God, to God's work, to God's plan, even though it didn't go the way they thought it was going to go. Sometimes the plan doesn't go the way you think it's going to go. That doesn't mean you can start calling names and start abandoning ship. You've got to stay firm to the end. Stay strong, stay faithful all the way to the end, guys. We're in a long haul here. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Stay faithful to the Lord. Stay faithful to what he wants you to do, how he wants you to do it, where he wants you to do it. Don't tell him no. Don't say I'm too scared. Don't say I'm too afraid. Don't say this isn't my time. Don't make excuses. Stay strong. Stay strong. Because God brings favor as Abiathar associates majesty. Abiathar. Who's Abiathar? Ahimelech's boy. They thought they killed all of them when they killed all 85. They thought they were all dead. They're not all dead, guys. They're not all dead. Abiathar escapes. One of the sons of Ahimelech, the son of Ahitub, named Abiathar, escaped and fled after David. Abiathar told David that Saul had killed the Lord's priests. So David said to Abiathar, I knew that day when Doeg the Edomite was there that he would surely tell Saul, I have caused the death of all the persons of your father's house. Stay with me, do not fear, for he who seeks my life seeks your life, but with me you shall be safe. David takes full responsibility for all that happened. Should he have gone to Nob to the priests on that day? He's taking responsibility. As a result of him going there, all this happened. His deception has led to this decay. He's taking responsibility for it because when we're first with outstretched wings, remember last week, we have the opportunity to do things that we want to do when we finally want to do it. We're going to make a mistake and we're going to bobble. We're going to have issues and we're going to have problems. The question isn't whether or not you're going to have those issues. The question is, will you take responsibility for your actions? David said, I knew that day when Doeg was there that we were going to have problems. I caused the deaths. It is my fault. I take responsibility for my actions. And while he's on the run from Saul, and this is the section that we're in, and while he's on the run from Saul, you know, God has never really stopped teaching him. Will you be able to take responsibility for deaths if you are going to be the king? People will die under your command. Will you take responsibility for it? Will you feel it right here when bad things happen? Or will you not care when things go bad or things go south? God is going to bring favor. Abiathar could be as mad as a hornet at David. His whole family just got killed. Like, hello, is this thing on? His whole family just got killed, all 85 of them. Can you imagine if you had 85 people in your family and every one of them gets killed because of something that I did? I went to your house. I should have never went there. Somebody was chasing me with a gun or something like that. I go to your house. I leave. That person goes to your house and kills all 85 of your family members. I imagine you might be a little mad at me at this point because I should have never gone there. But what does Abiathar do? He recognizes God's appointment in David. He associates this majesty that God has already anointed, and he's going to join David. And their relationship is going to endure for a long time. And God brings that kind of favor with Abiathar to David, even though he doesn't deserve it. God brings this faithfulness, even though David doesn't deserve it. And God brings friends to David, even though he doesn't deserve it. The provision of God in our lives is so amazing and so awesome. I hope that over the next week, you're so intent on looking for the goodness of God in your life and the provision that he provides to you, in spite of the fact that you probably don't deserve any of it. I hope that you're finding something like that throughout the course of at least this next week, if not the rest of your life. Let's pray.